Madam President, I certainly want to thank my colleague, Senator Shaheen from New Hampshire. As she has stated, New Hampshire doesn't have a sales tax, and the so-called Marketplace Fairness Act, there's absolutely nothing fair about it, especially for a state like New Hampshire. It should be more appropriately named the Internet Sales Tax Collection Act, because that's what it is, Internet Sales Tax Collection Act. And I certainly appreciate the work that I've done with my colleague, the both of us fighting the Marketplace Fairness Act, because there's nothing fair about it for New Hampshire, and frankly, nothing fair about it for online businesses across this country. This act would ask our online businesses that have been thriving and growing. Many people have started these businesses from their homes, and we've seen those businesses really flourish in our home state of New Hampshire. They would ask these businesses to become tax collectors for states that are greedy for revenue and would really trample on the decision of a state like New Hampshire not to have a sales tax. And what it would mean is, as an online business, you now have to become the tax collector, not just for the states, the 50 states, but you actually have to become a tax collector for over 9,000 tax jurisdictions in this country. Talk about a bureaucratic nightmare for an online business. Talk about an act that is going to put onerous burdens on an area of commerce that we've seen such great growth in. Talk about an act that is totally misnamed, because there's nothing fair about it. It really is an Internet Sales Tax Collection Act, and something that, to my home state of New Hampshire, I've had so many businesses, online businesses, write me about how this act, this MFA Act, is going to hurt their business, is going to place onerous requirements on our businesses, and not only would they be forced to collect taxes for these other jurisdictions, over 9,000, but can you imagine once one of those jurisdictions, a municipality that is allowed to tax, changes their tax amount, then suddenly they've got to update their collection method. And guess what? If they get it wrong, they're subject to being sued in some other state, some other jurisdiction. This is going to hurt the development of more online businesses, because it just creates a big bureaucracy. And it's totally inappropriate. Why are we asking these thriving online businesses to become the tax collectors for states? And often the reason we have over 9,000 jurisdictions they'd have to collect for, it's not just states, it goes down to, in some states, even the municipal level has its own sales tax that can be collected. What a mess. And here, as we see what's happening in Washington, the Majority Leader Rule 14'd a bill, and what he did is he attached the Marketplace Fairness Act, which I prefer to call the Internet Sales Tax Collection Act, to what was just passed in the House of Representatives, the Internet Tax Freedom Act. Talk about ironic. The Internet Tax Freedom Act is something I strongly, strongly support. What it is going to prevent is taxes over the internet, taxing the internet that could hit all of us in some way, so that we can protect the freedom of the internet and the growth that we've seen on the internet. And it's so widely supported on both sides of the aisle, as my colleague from New Hampshire just said. And so the irony of it is here we have an act that's so widely supported, Internet Tax Freedom Act, so that we don't tax the internet. And the Majority Leader decides to attach to it this so-called Marketplace Fairness Act, which is really the Internet Sales Tax Collection Act, which creates new onerous burdens on online businesses to become the tax collectors for over 9,000 tax jurisdictions. And you can see the irony of it. Here we have bipartisan support for freedom from taxes on the internet that should be extended to allow the internet to thrive and grow and to continue to grow. And the majority leader, without a hearing, because when he Rule 14s it, there's no committee hearing. It doesn't go through the committee process where we can have hearings on the burdens this will place on online commerce and on online businesses, not only in my home state of New Hampshire, but in other businesses across the country. So no hearing for this. It's just something that both sides of the aisle agree with. Let's keep the internet tax-free. The majority leader attaches onto it with no hearing under Rule 14, this onerous requirement, which I'd like to call the Internet Sales Tax Collection Act. Of course, in Washington, they always name these acts to make you think it sounds good, so they call it the Marketplace Fairness Act. And that's the irony of only in Washington would you have rammed through this process without a committee hearing, something that protects internet freedom, that has strong bipartisan support, attached with it new onerous burdens for those who are internet businesses to become the sales tax collectors for the nation. So I would join what my colleague from New Hampshire just said. I think it's wrong that this bill is being pushed forward with the Internet Tax Freedom Act that has such strong support, that should be brought to this body as a standalone, not with these new burdensome requirements that are set forth in the so-called Marketplace Fairness Act, otherwise known as the Internet Sales Tax Collection Act. And the people of this country deserve to have a free, tax-free internet. And the online businesses of this country that are thriving and growing shouldn't become the tax collectors for states and municipalities who are greedy for more revenue. It's their job to collect their taxes. It shouldn't be an online business's job to collect taxes for over 9,000 jurisdictions, because you can only imagine how many changes will happen and what kind of paperwork nightmare that will create for those businesses. I've heard it from our businesses firsthand. So I would hope that this body would oppose any effort to vote for a bill that connects internet tax freedom with Internet Sales Tax Collection Act, because the two are antithetical. One works against the other. One ensures the freedom of the internet to be tax-free. The other one creates new burdensome requirements on online businesses, and actually it cuts against, in my view, the thriving commerce that we see over the internet, and has resulted in more choice for all of us as consumers in this country.